Days of Remembrance was established by the U.S. Congress to memorialize the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, as well as the millions of non-Jewish victims of Nazi persecution. This year we celebrate 75 years since the end of World War II and commemorate the hope, resilience, and survival during the horror years of the Holocaust. Today, we remember them as people who, in spite of being forced to live in a man-made hell, chose not to let go of that extreme will to live. As the world grapples with the ongoing pandemic, people may default to self-pity, wondering when we will go back to our regular, normal lives. While we are mourning the thousands who perished and embrace those who are affected by this invisible enemy, we pause to commemorate the Holocaust and apply lessons of resiliency to our lives now. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, many survivors felt that God was personally with them, giving them the strength and courage to survive. There were people who lost their faith. There were people who kept their faith. And there were people who found faith in the darkest of times. Where is God today? Look at the doctors, nurses, medics, and so many kind people stepping up and helping those in need during these trying times. You will find God working through them, shining into this world, making it a better place. During remembrance observances, we hear about the sheer numbers of those lost. The people who were dehumanized by losing their identity as individuals, some killed on the spot, and others identified with a number on their arm. These people you may have never heard of, people that turn with time into statistics. Yet today, I want to mention some of the names shown on this screen. Samuel Stern, Abraham Stern, David Stern, Zissel Stern. These are not just any names. Rather, they are my family. These are some of the cards my grandfather wrote in witness to the atrocities of the war. These are his brothers and his parents who were killed by the Nazis in Auschwitz as his sister watched but survived to share it with the world years later. The story I heard from my grandmother, who at the tender age of 12 was sent with a kinder transport, where she was separated from her family, knowing she may never see them again.
During World War II, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was being transported between concentration camps. She had already been in several. In fact, I recently found a document verifying her entrance into her arrival into Dachau. And she had been taken from one of the concentration camps and being marched. These were referred to as death marches. A lot of her fellow prisoners were falling on the side of the road, being shot, dying of exhaustion, dehydration. And she'd already been walking for 3 weeks at that time, when suddenly they heard a buzz in the sky. They looked up and they saw United States aircraft, U.S. Army, and the Germans, the Nazis who were guarding them, who were marching with them, just ran off, not looking back, and left these prisoners by themselves on the road. And that was the beginning of the liberation, of the salvation of these Nazi prisoners, my grandmother among them. Her waiting and her marching was extremely painful. Her liberation, however, began with the arrival of the U.S. military, when her captors, her guards, ran off.
Yet today, we remember. Today we remember all the victims of terror and hate here at home and around the world, the victims of injustice and the victims of inequality. We specifically remember the victims of the greatest crime of man against man, the young, the old, the innocent, the 1.5 million children, starved, shot, given lethal injections, gassed, burned, and turned to ash, all because they were deemed guilty of the crime of being Jewish. The sheer scale of the Holocaust can overwhelm us. On September 11th, 2001, 3,000 people died in the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, the worst terrorist incident in American history. During the Holocaust, on average, 3,000 Jews were murdered every day for 5.5 years. If we were to observe a minute of silence for each victim of the Holocaust, the silence would last more than 11 years. Today, we remember. We remember what happens when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. What happens when victims cry for help and there is no one listening. What happens when humanity fails to recognize that those who are not in our image are nonetheless in God's image. We remember the Jews. More than 1 in 2 of every Jew in Europe, young and old, rich and poor, pious and assimilated, and 1.5 million children, a whole murdered generation. For these I weep, says the book of Lamentations. My eyes run with tears, and there is no one to comfort me, no one to restore my spirit. We remember the victims. We remember those who found the strength of the human spirit and chose to act courageously. Those who could have sat silently like many others did, however they chose to act. With their courageous acts, countless lives were saved. One such man was Sir Nicholas Winton, who organized the kinder transport with which my grandmother was saved. Sir Winton was not Jewish, and he could have observed the war from afar. However, in his own words, the motto, "Don't be content in your life just to do no wrong. Be prepared every day to do good." Today, we remember.
On Yom HaZikaron, on this Remembrance Day, Holocaust Remembrance Day, I don't only remember the loved ones, the countless family members that I've lost. Not only do I remember those monsters who perpetrated these heinous crimes against humanity, but I also remember those service members who brought the salvation and made it possible for me to be part of this great force. And for that I am grateful.
Humanity must continue to remember places like the death camps Dachau and Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen and Birkenau, and let us never think it could not happen again, as in some form or another. It is happening again, and we are witnessing it daily with news about anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, and the BDS movement. We must recognize hatred wherever and whenever we see it. And we resolutely say, we will not let anyone knock us down. Terrorism will not win. As a Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel said, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." And today, more than ever, we recognize the difference between victims and survivors, as victims live in the past. Survivors look to the future. And so, we honor the survivors who somehow found a great strength, the strength of the human spirit. With perseverance and an absolute iron will, they looked towards the future, and with their stubborn faith in life itself, they married, had children, grandchildren, and refused to let evil have the final word or the final victory. And so, the survivors became my heroes. They built a life for themselves, and after only a few years, they did look back. And they did tell their stories, taught them to all their children, and bore witness so that the world would know these things happened not just through films or books, but through the words of those who were there. To remember them and their stories not as victims, rather as heroes, whose whole lives after the Holocaust were a way of thanking God for life by enhancing the lives of others. We cannot change the past, but the survivors have shown us that out of the wreckage of destruction, something can be redeemed from the past if we fight hate with love, brutality with compassion, and death with an unconquerable dedication to life. To the next generation, we must say, we hope you become aware that even one person can make a difference in the world. We owe it to all those who perished to keep this observance in order to keep their memory alive, by adding in acts of goodness and kindness to make this world a better place for all. We must harness the human spirit and celebrate diversity instead of feeling threatened by it. We must recognize the dignity of difference. We must understand that one who is not in my image is still in God's image, even if their color is not mine, culture is not mine, even if their religion is not mine. This is why we must take time to remember. We must take the time to ensure that history does not repeat itself, and that we will remain strong to fight for a world of peace, a world where, regardless of religion or race, we all live peacefully together. On this great day of commemoration, may God bless us all, the survivors, the liberators, and each and every one of us who will take it upon ourselves to be inspired and make a difference. May we have the courage to fight hate in the name of our shared and undeniable humanity. May we never be afraid to fight for a world in which no one has to live in fear. We know that while we do not have the ability to change the past, we must change the future. And so, on this day of remembrance, we commit ourselves to one simple act. Yizkor, remember.
I light a candle in honor of all of those who died during the Holocaust, in honor of the 6 million, Zichronom Livracham. May their memories be for a blessing.
Yizkor, remember.
Yizkor, remember.
Yizkor, remember. Remember.
Yizkor.
Yizkor, remember.
Yizkor, remember.
Yizkor.
Yizkor,
I remember.
Yizkor, remember.
Yizkor, remember. Yizkor, remember.
At this time, please join me in observing a moment of silence, followed by a memorial prayer. Avachamim shochen b'meromim. May the Father of mercy, who dwells on high in his profound compassion, remember with mercy the pious, the upright, and the innocent, the communities who lost their lives for the sanctification of the divine name. Grant rest in your divine presence in the lofty abode of the holy to the souls of our brothers and sisters, 6 million Jewish men, women, and children who suffered death at the hands of the cursed Nazis and their associates. Lest we forget the victims of terror on our land and around the world. O Lord, please do not be silent and show no restraint on behalf of the blood that has been spilled like water. Yizkerem Eloheinu Latova im she'ar tzadikei olam. May God remember them with favor, together with the other righteous of the world, and avenge the spilled blood of his servants. Therefore, the Master of mercy shall care for them under the protection of his wings for all eternity, and may the souls of the victims be bound in the bond of everlasting life. Amen.